Hey, welcome back to the 11 cast. I'm exzisd here for another episode. Today we're joined by. What is your name, sir?
My name, it depends on which citizenship I use, but my name is Brian Matthew Uhl,
Okay, Brian.
and my Canadian name is Brian Uhl, and in Japanese they call me Brian Mato, or they call me just Mashu, and in Hungary they call me Uhl Brian Matthew, and in my Slovakian citizenship, they called me just Brian Uhl, and Uhl, sorry, Uhl, and I get it confused myself. And of course, in Germany, with the we have to have the umlaut, and so it's Brian Matthew Uhl. So there we go. That's my name.
Wow, a man of many names. I assume all those names translate to the same thing. Do you know why you were named Brian?
Yes, in fact, at the time, my father's German and my mother is Slovak, and they just liked the sound of that name, and they really thought it would. They liked the initials BMU. Why, I have no idea,
Huh.
but that is just that they liked the sound of the name. They thought it would flow easier, and my father. My father's name was Adolf, so I don't
Oh,
think at that time it was really that popular.
wow.
Especially he had a difficult childhood when he
I'd
was in
imagine.
Canada. So yeah, so I think they wanted to stray away from the Adolf and go more towards. Why don't we just go down to the next letter and find
Yeah,
something that's a little bit more westernized? So I believe that was
definitely.
part of the decision as well. And my
Well,
mother is Olga, which is a Slovak name, and I think if they were going to go with Hungarian Balázs, or they were going to go with a German name or something like Martin, or they would have, or Johann, or I think Brian was the best name to make life as easy as possible for me.
yeah. Well, I think your father Adolf did a good job not naming you Adolf Jr. Wouldn't want to make life any more difficult than it is these days. But
Exactly.
that's really interesting. They basically comes down to they like the sound of it, and it kind of goes into what you're doing these days is making sounds. If you boil it down, could you? I'm looking at your website. I see a couple things: narrator, MC, interpreter, on camera, and a lot of other Japanese letters. I assume, or I'm not sure. Is that kanji?
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's kanji. That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So what is your craft? What do you do for a living? Because I
Um,
found you through the Super Monkey Ball, which we're not here to talk about today. But Nick Robinson on YouTube made some great videos, and a lot of people found out about you through Super Monkey Ball, the beloved video game franchise by Sega. But I want to learn more about the voice acting and other things you do.
sure. Well, I've been in Japan for 30 years, and but I travel a lot. This is the most important thing to me is to travel. I've been to over 65 countries. I hold 4 passports. To me, travel is life, and right now, as you can see, with the way everything is set up, it's stifling
Oh
not to
yeah.
be able to travel. This is
Mm-hmm.
my addiction, and so I would say the most important thing is travel is a hobby that I love and it's something I'm very passionate about. But I did work for biotech for 20 years. I worked in small cell lung cancer for working on phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials. I also worked for UVA, UVB, and skin cancer. And I also worked for a Norwegian company when I was in aquaculture. So I was in the south of Japan for 8.5 years, working with the local farmers and trying to get farmed yellow sea bream and red sea bream and yellowtail farmed where there was formerly pro farms. And so I did that for 8.5 years, and then I worked for a Chinese Israeli American company that totally 100% was functioning on um, prostate cancer, and again, small lung cancer and skin cancer.
Oh,
So I have a very strong medical background and
interesting.
research background. Very passionate about it. I loved what I did, but I realized in life, and someone had told me this when I was quite young, don't ever do one thing, do many
Yeah, definitely. So
things,
that's what
and for many reasons. And I always kept that with me.
that's a great thing. You know,
And
don't have all your eggs in one basket. And you know, what was the transition? You know, I mean, nowadays I assume the majority of your works in voice work. And what was the inspiration, or what opened the door for that for you?
30 years ago, there was a gentleman named Chris Pepler. He's half Japanese and half American. He's still to this day the greatest and the most famous bilingual announcer, DJ, not DJ, sorry, announcer in Japan, and voice, not a voice actor. He's one of those, it's a Sony kind of deep
Oh,
voice.
right.
But anyway, he said to me, I was filming a movie at that time was the Soviet Union, and it was a Japanese Soviet production, the very first one in the southern part of Russia, Yuzhno Sakhalinsk, and they needed someone who spoke Russian and Japanese. And at that time, he saw my performance, and he said, "Wow, you've got a great voice." Clearly, I don't right now, but he said,
I think
"You
it
have a
sounds
great
great.
voice." He said, "You should do narration." It's a feather in my cap. I'd like to introduce you to J-Wave, and from there, the offers kept coming in, and all the TV programs. And then someone said, you don't have a face for radio or for narration. You've got the voice, but you should be on TV and you should be doing videos. And so I agreed to that, and everything just exploded from there. So for roughly 15 years, I was working 7 days a week, balancing two different jobs, one in aquaculture and one in biotech, and also doing full-time narration.
Wow.
On the food channel, for example, was Yori no Tatsujin, Iron Chef. I did that for 6 years. And by doing Iron Chef, I mean, I guess that was quite popular in the States at that time, 15, 20 years ago. And the jobs just keep coming in and coming in and coming in, and it just never stopped. But I still believe to this day, the key to life is balance. And when I say balance, I mean balance between your work, and don't do one job. I feel sorry for anyone who's stuck in a cubicle. And I don't mean this in
Right.
any, bad way whatsoever. I just like to say that, there is so many things that you can do in life. Get out there and do them and take a chance. I mean, I took a chance by coming over here. I did not plan on spending 3 decades here.
Oh wow,
I
you've
came
been over
over with
there
the
over 30
government.
years.
Yes,
In
30 years.
Tokyo.
I came over with the Canadian government. They wanted someone who spoke Japanese and Russian. And so I worked for them for 2 years and realized I didn't like sitting around flipping pencils around and pushing paperwork around and looking at the clock.
Yeah, I
It's
definitely
just
can
not who
agree
I
with
am.
that.
I
I
wanted to
think
use my brain.
that's something that I think a lot of
And,
people aspire to. Yeah, 30 years, long time in
and
Tokyo there.
yes, but saying that, in the last 10 years, I made sure that I always took 3 or 4 months of the year, and I was in Europe 3 or 4 times a year because I have land in Europe, my grandparents' land, and I have great friends there. And as a citizen, of 3 countries in the EU, that's my responsibility. That's where my blood is from. And also in Canada, I have a mother and sister that are still there, and I'm very close to them, and I want to spend as much time with them as possible. So everything is possible. You just have to make it work and not be lazy, and plan ahead and make it work, and no fear, move forward.
I admire that philosophy, and I think that no fear thing especially ties in with doing all these things. I mean, you have so much background in terms of the languages you speak, the jobs you've done, the roles you've played, both in life and with your work. It's all a lot for an 11-minute podcast, but really interesting to hear some of your background, and you know, outside of the monkey ball hype that's going on, I have your Instagram up here if anybody wants to, take a look at it. It's just Brian Tokyo Japan. We have about a minute left here, and the theme of the show is, time waits for no one. Do what you can with what you have. I think you kind of said a lot of things that you love to do along with your craft, but outside of your work and what you've made your money off of, your livelihood, you mentioned travel earlier. Are there other things you like that you're doing to pass the time, considering the current world situation?
Uh, I try to help local businesses as much as I can, and it doesn't matter which country I'm in, especially now because I hate to see so many people going bankrupt. So support your local communities. And also, I took my license. It took 8 years to become the first foreign shiatsu teacher in Japan. So I do that as well. And I would just say go for it and do everything you can. Life is short. Have no fear. Go forward, because if you don't, time's up.
Hey, and time's up right now because you got the time around too. Well, thank you so much, Brian, Matt. Time waits for no one. And check them out
My pleasure.
online on Instagram. Thank you so much for your time, sir. And
Not a problem. And sorry about the. It's really hard to put 30 years in 11 minutes and 11 seconds.
Yeah, I hear you.
Someone